loan officer is being brought in as a junior loan officer to a senior loan officer that's bringing in volume, yes, your pay might be less. You might have other different duties and responsibilities. But probably the biggest benefit, in my opinion, is being exposed to so many different files and case studies. Your learning and knowledge will happen so much faster because you have more files to learn from, even though you're not making a full commission or any commission on working on those files.
Welcome back to After 5 p.m. podcast, where we clock out of mortgages at 5 p.m. and then clock into family, life, and finances. I'm your host, Shaun Russin, with Ben
McAfee. Okay, I'm actually excited about this podcast. Shaun and I, for those who are listening for the first time, Shaun and I have worked together at previous mortgage companies. We currently are both managing offices for different mortgage companies, but both branch managers. I want to get some of your perspective in a conversation that I recently had in the last couple of weeks with a loan officer that is licensed, right? So he was committed to the business and was looking to make some changes. He has not been working full time, and just kind of explored that conversation. So ultimately, what advice, what expectations would you set for a loan officer trying to get into the business and get established, and especially with the market conditions that we're dealing with now?
Yeah.
Things that are a little bit slower. So, yeah, I'm just kind of curious. I have some thoughts from that conversation that I'd like to share and obviously expound on it from your end.
Yeah, I know when you kind of called me and mentioned, hey, I've got this new loan officer, and I kind of grilled him for an hour. And so that kind of came, the idea came from that. So, yeah, I mean, take us through how the meeting came up and how it went, and some questions maybe you had, and then how you could help other loan officers in the same boat.
So some of my concerns, I think, are when I got into the business, the branch manager, the one, I guess, recruiting me at the time, highlighted all of the good, right? The income potential, the flexibility of your schedule, all of the things that we would be drawn to, but conveniently didn't tell me the things I would stress about in the business. Didn't tell me just how hard it was going to be to get established. I felt like those things were one of those, you'll figure it out as you go. And that's not a fault. I'm super grateful for the gentleman who got me in. Shout out to Paul Carter for hiring me and getting me into the business. But that was my perspective every time I talked to someone that's interested in getting into the business. I tried to share, hey, there's a bunch of awesome income potential, some flexibility, but at the same time, it is not easy. It is hard. It's stressful. You need to understand both sides of it as you commit. So, one of the things that I asked out of the gate was, "What's your why? Why get into this business?" And I challenged him and said, "I would like to see your dream board. What is it you want? Not only in the here and the now, but in the short term, midterm, long term, and how does mortgages fit into that vision?" I think not only the vision of what you want to do with the career, but how does the mortgage fit into the lifestyle that you want to live with raising a family? And then the one that I think was a very interesting takeaway is, what is your wife's dream board and vision, and do they mesh? So I think he was kind of caught off guard when I brought that up in conversation. Was your wife's opinion of this is every bit as important as yours. So give me your take on that.
Yeah. How did he handle the questions then? Was it clear? Was it unclear? Or?
I think I brought up things in that conversation that he hadn't thought of before. I think it was thought provoking and made him realize he needs to go back and have some more conversations with his wife and make sure they are going into eyes wide open. Yeah. We were just joking before we turned on the podcast. Huge shout out to my wife, Stacy McAfee. She just got back from running a marathon. And you're laughing, Shaun, because we were joking on just how much time commitment it is to train properly for a marathon or for an Ironman, any of those endurance sports. And I was joking that it's a family commitment to run a marathon. The amount of time to do it and do it right requires effort from more than one individual. But mad props to my wife. I obviously am not a marathon runner. I'm amazed by her endurance and commitment, but I feel like it's the same thing. Getting into mortgages, it's a family commitment. If you're married, the spouse needs to be completely on board with what that commitment looks like for you to be successful.
Yeah, and it can, especially if you're committing to being the best you can as a loan officer, it's going to overtake, and there's going to be some family life balance issues that will come up, and then we're going to hit on that later. But with you getting into the business and Paul like recruiting you that way, do you think it actually helped you by not kind of knowing what to expect, or do you think it hurt you?
A little bit of being naive out of the gate got me to commit, and then commit far enough in that you can't turn around and go back. So I think there's a part that's actually good in the business to be a little bit naive. But I wish I would have known a little bit more than I did.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think back. Like, I didn't know anything about mortgages, and so it was just kind of like jump in and, do this, do that. And I wonder if I knew more about the pitfalls or the struggles or, what to expect more realistically if I wouldn't have pursued it. Not that you shouldn't be thinking about your why and your vision and, going in with eyes wide open, but knowing what I know now, it's like,
Sure. One of the things I brought up in conversation with this gentleman was when you're a W-2 employee working your hourly or salary position, you often have one job or one boss. When you're operating a pipeline that has maybe 10 transactions in it, you have 10 different bosses. There's more people that you're answering to. So there's an element that's saying, hey, there's a lot of flexibility to this job, which there is. I'm not punching a time clock coming in and coming out, but there's a lot more people that are holding me accountable with clear communication, follow through. So sometimes it feels like you have more than one boss.
Yeah. Any advice to younger LOs or newer LOs on crafting that vision or working with your spouse? Any advice you'd give to them? Or
we might have even talked about it on the podcast previously, but I think it's very common. You hear the cliche, work it backwards, reverse engineering, some of those terms. I think it's good to always have some kind of dream board goals that you're working towards, but it's also very important to redo those. My wife and I a couple of years ago kind of redid ours more verbally than we did actually writing them down. But it's amazing at how much your vision change as your situation changes. Our family is completely different the last time that we did the dream board. Our retirement goals are different. Some of our financial goals are less about security and maybe material things. It's more about we want to spend money for experiences more than anything else. And that has become more apparent and clear the further into our marriage. So it's just sitting down and having the conversations. I feel like we kind of have our own internal goals, but do we talk about it enough with our spouses, with what do we want, what do they want, and how does that mesh? So tell me, how often do you chat with your wife about your goals, both personal and professional, and what are hers?
Yeah, we don't. That's definitely an area we could improve on, and that's why I thought it was interesting that you put that in there. And I wasn't married at the time when I started loans, so it was just like, hey, I'm gonna send it, So, but yeah, if there is a younger LO that is married and they're making a big career change, especially to commission income and making such a big change, you have to get your family on board. I think, Yeah.
And part of it is being on board, because if you have a plan, if you have a goal, you have a vision, when things get hard, when the money's not coming in at the rate that you want it to, and there has to be sacrifices, if you have that vision, it's easier to stick by that vision and stay the course. But I feel like when you're not having the goal planning and vision and perspective, it's a lot easier to fall off the wagon. It just is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but we're kind of on the topic of second job, night and weekend. Burn rate was another topic in here. So if someone is committing, and maybe walk us through a couple of those points.
Okay. Just using myself as an example. When I got into the business, prior to me getting into the business, I was working construction, 40 hours a week. I was going to school nights and evening classes, taking a full load with school. And when I decided to commit to the mortgage industry, I knew that I needed the 8 to 5 time frame to establish myself in the mortgage industry and real estate at large. I knew that working construction were those same hours. So being a commission-based industry, I needed to have some other income to keep me afloat, to pay my bills. So I quit the construction job and got a job with Costco stocking shelves on nights and weekends. I burned myself out. Now, I wasn't married at the time, so it allowed me to have those 2 jobs and not have those additional commitments with family. But it was a double-edged sword. I needed that second job to keep me afloat for the initial, 6 months or so. But it also got to a point of, at what point do you quit that second job and go all in? Now, I feel like the second job should be nights and weekends, because if you're going to get established in this business, you can't do it part-time. You have to give a 40-hour-a-week effort, and then over time, you're going to have, a moment where you're going to have to quit that second job, double down even further on mortgages, and burn the boats. That's a term that I've used where there's no looking back. Mm-hmm. There's no going back, burn the boats. I remember a gentleman by the name of Randy Lovelace. I look up to him as a life mentor. He was my scoutmaster, a gentleman in my neighborhood growing up that I looked up to. He's a real estate agent. And I remember I would go to him for advice when I first got licensed. And I remember distinctly sitting in his office chair, and he said, in order to take your business to the next level, the next step, you got to quit Costco. It's sink or swim. You talk yourself out of making certain prospecting calls and, pop-in visits to brokerages, trying to establish those relationships. And you talk yourself out of it when you have another income stream, where if it's not there, it takes the option away. You have to make those phone calls. And so I'm really glad I took his advice when he told me it's time. Time to quit Costco. And guess what? The day I quit Costco, I never received another goose egg. Goose egg meaning not having a closing in a given month. But prior to that, I'd close one month, not have a closing the next, have 2 closings the next month, have no closings for 2 months in a row, right? So there was just this peak and valley. The moment I quit, all of a sudden I had a closing every single month.
And you think that's just because you were committed?
Oh, 100%. You don't have the option anymore.
Right.
Yeah,
there's not that.
Burn the boat.
Yeah, that's cool.
So
that's a cool story. In line with that too, it's your relationship with money. So if this burn rate, right? You're not going to get a commission for 6 months or however long it takes. You have to have the savings there to still kind of cover your base expenses. So being financially wise and preparing maybe to cut off and commit. If you're going all in.
So branch manager to branch manager. How much money would you recommend a loan officer who's getting into the business with no experience? How much money do you think they should have in the bank to keep them afloat until they can be consistent enough with commissions coming in?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on their expenses, but I would think 6 months, I think, is the number that's just kind of coming top of mind. What do you think? Longer, 12 months?
In the market that we're in right now, probably longer than 6 months.
And you're talking about someone totally green, going in, new market, new relationships, not joining a team or getting leads, right? Yeah, it might be more like 8 to 12 months.
Or 12 to 18. It's just tough with how the market has contracted to, a significant reduction in mortgage volume. Even the big producers in our market have had to shift quite a bit. Talking to a lot of them, it's about a 70% dip in income and volume closed. So a new person breaking into it, you have that second job, you have a little bit of, I shouldn't say a little bit, 6 months of reserves. And then the key is when the commissions start coming in, that you're not spending that money either, that you're still living ultra conservative as that account hopefully continues to build.
Did you notice it in your career? The more I worked in mortgages and around people that, were higher income earners or clients that were high income earners, I just started to be a better, what's the word? I just managed my own money better. I just became more aware. Do you think is that just like by affiliation, or?
I think a huge advantage that you and I have, and all loan officers out there, look at all the case studies that we're exposed to. When people take a mortgage application, they are financially getting naked for you. It's not just the income and assets you see, like, say, a financial planner. You're seeing all of the liabilities. You even get to see the report card of how good they are at paying their bills with the credit report and FICO scores. I think we can see a bunch of these examples of good and bad, and it's easy to gravitate going, okay, I want to be more like this. And then you start adopting some of those, I guess, principles. People have asked me about my real estate, investing in real estate. And some of the best conversations I've had have been with clients who have real estate. I find out they have rentals through the mortgage application, and I take the extra time to grill them with questions. Successes, failures. Why did you invest in this and not that? It's so much you can learn by asking questions.
Yeah, you really do kind of share. Like, there's not another line of work that I know other than maybe like a financial planner where you're seeing as much as you are for a client. Down to their bank statement, every little thing. And so
you really like Olive Garden.
Yeah, we've got some stories on that we could share too, right? So I think it does help for you to be around that and then become a better money manager, like you kind of mentioned here with time.
Just going back to that money manager, I think a really key thing for loan officers is delayed gratification. Delayed gratification with some of the financial spending, I think, is directly tied to that dream board and vision. So many people want things, they want it now. And if we can kick that can down the road, I'm not saying that you're not going to get it, but just put some space and time in between your want and the gratification will set you up for more financial success. Example of another personal example. When I was in the business and I started getting some paychecks coming in, and seeing the account in my checking account at the local credit union grow, I started noticing that some of the college buddies that I had would want to go out to eat because it's half price appetizers at Applebee's or Chili's or whatever. And it was really hard for me to say, I'll stay home and eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, because I'd rather spend my money by delaying that Chili's meal now is going to get me a really nice steak dinner later. I'd rather have the steak dinner.
Yeah.
So I would still often go. I would go to the Chili's, but I would be the guy ordering the Diet Coke and hanging out socially and not necessarily spending the money on the food. That's just one example of mine that's saying I would rather exchange the hamburger today for the steak in a few years. I don't know, kind of random.
Yeah, no, I think it ties in because also it's, your income starts to go up, and then a lot of times there's that lifestyle creep. So you get the nicer car, the things, right?
Mm-hmm.
You start to overspend, and then your budget goes up. But I think, especially what's cool with your story and your rentals is get some duplexes, get some single family, get some rentals, right? And then use that residual income to pay for those things. And you still are extremely conservative.
What are you trying to say, Sean?
I'm saying you can get a newer truck, man. I give you permission, you know? But no, it's just smart to build and that money that you do earn now, because it can be seasonal too. There's really busy times in the mortgage industry and there's slower times, and it's smart to put stuff away, and especially just investing in smarter things too. And instead of liabilities.
Couldn't agree more. I'm curious, from your perspective as a branch manager, how important is motivation in hiring a LO?
I'm still learning what to look for with loan officers, but the saying that comes to mind is you can teach skill, you can't teach attitude. Mm-hmm. And I think that ties into motivation too, is the way someone shows up, how they show up, how they act. Those are the like internal values and things you want to seek out in potential people you're going to work with and grow and build and help their business grow, versus, you know, hey, I think I kind of like this thing. I don't really know. Like, you know, it would be harder for me to invest in someone like that versus like someone that's like really hungry and wants to go and do it.
But how do you know that off of an interview?
You don't. I mean, you can kind of feel it, I think, but yeah, longevity, I think it's hard to really know for sure. But I think part of it too comes back as like as a leader and how you're leading, and are you coaching, and you know, things like that. Are they in coaching? Are they seeing you be successful? You know, the branch culture. I think there's a lot of factors that go into that long-term success. But if they have that drive, I don't know, I feel like you can pick up on it.
Sure.
But it might take more interviews or a recommendation, or maybe know their family or something. But I mean, what do you think as far as motivation goes?
When it comes to motivation, I feel like there's two types of motivation. There's internal motivation and external. I feel like as a branch manager, as a leader, it is my job to try to have an externally stimulate, right? Hey, maybe there's a contest one month. Maybe it's chasing that number that will qualify you for a President's Club trip at the end of the year with corporate. Sometimes a $50 Amazon card can go a really long way. But the problem with those external motivators is they are temporary and have an expiration date. Once the competition is over, once the calendar year ends and all of your numbers go back to zero, that external motivation dissipates and is gone. Mm-hmm. So to me, I can only do so much to help motivate someone. I can take the horse to water. I can't force the horse to drink. But if I can learn about someone's internal motivation, what is that drive? What is it that stokes that furnace inside your chest that only you can do? Mm-hmm. And I think it's a good question to ask people, because a lot of people don't really know what it is. They need to do some soul searching to find out what is it that motivates me. And I have found through my own experiences certain things that motivate me. They can be different. One thing is tell me I can't accomplish something. That'll motivate me. It's kind of negative motivation to a certain degree. But tell me I can't do something, and that will motivate me to prove you wrong. But everybody's different, and I think it's really important to pose that question and make people think, so that they can kind of get to know their own personality and use it to their advantage. What is your fire, Shaun? What is it that the internal motivator?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been thinking about it more this last year than anything, and it does come from kind of a shortage mentality. Like it's the growing up, I was not like, we weren't financially well off, and it was like the fear of loss and the fear of being poor, and so it's like I'll just grind just because I don't want to go back to that place.
Sure.
You know. So for me, it's not like the most positive motivator, and I think I could shift it a little bit, but yeah, not have to go back to that place I was at before motivates me to just, hey, I'll do whatever to not go back.
Sure.
Like,
but here's my thought is that's a motivator, and I think it will burn hot for a while.
Sure.
But there will come a point where you have enough financial security that you've got the rentals, you've got the financial investments and assets, that motivation might not be as strong, right? It might have a diminishing return. Yeah. Because you know that you don't have to go back. You've got the safety net built that you won't. Mm-hmm. So I challenge you. What's the next thing, right? What's the next thing to identify that can help stoke the fire? So
yeah, I'm considering enrolling in therapy.
So.
I mean, to flip it for you, do you have a pretty clear internal motivation, you think?
Yeah. there's several things that have happened, and both of them are kind of tied to the same example I used of tell me I can't do something, and I will do everything I can, not to rub it in your face and prove to you that I can, but more of a to prove to myself that I can, prove to myself that I am part of the 2 or 3% percentile, right? I had someone tell me when I was very first getting into the business that 80% of the loan officers, and I don't even know if these stats are right. I don't know how to verify them. 80% of the LOs don't make it past year 1. Then another 10% of them don't make it past year 2.
Oh, wow.
And when someone told me that, kind of that like, hey, let me know when you need a job, that fueled my fire to go, oh, I'm going to make sure that conversation never happens. I will be that top 10% that makes it past year 2. But again, that's kind of still a negative one. Now, I will tell you that, again, redoing that dream board, I think is also kind of just helps you reset those goals, recalibrate, and identify what you need to do metrics-wise to accomplish those goals. And I think that should be part of what helps the internal side is clarity on where you're going and why. And then when you have enough money to support yourself, what are you going to do when you have an abundance of it? Who are you going to help? Who are you going to give it to? What charities can you make a major impact to and with? So that's where I think it's always pushing yourself to have be a little bit more bigger minded.
Yeah. So you think your biggest motivator is just to show people that you can do it, or do you have other internal motivators?
Those are the ones that
you want to share.
No, I think those are the ones that I think in the first, earlier in my career that fired me up the most. They don't motivate me nearly as much. That's what I'm trying to get at is the motivators today is redoing that dream board with my wife and saying, okay, in order to get this next tier of goals and accomplishments, I got to stay disciplined, stay on task to reach that next tier. And so I think it's just that constantly reflecting back on what your goals and objectives are that help me stay motivated.
Yeah.
Clarity, right? If you know where you're going, point A to point B, rather than these squiggly marks, all over the place, you'll get there a lot quicker and more efficiently. I think another really important conversation to have is work-life balance. I will quickly share an experience that a real estate agent shared with me when we were kind of getting intimate in conversation, being vulnerable, and I was expressing to her my concern about my work-life balance. I felt like I was spending too many hours in the office and maybe not dedicating as much to my family. Now, I didn't have 4 kids at the time like I do now. I was earlier trying to get a more established in the business. And she highlighted something with me that was super impactful. And she said, you're more imbalanced than you realize. That life is like a symphony. And I'm not a music guy, so I at least understood what she was saying, and I hope I'm not butchering it. Those who are way into music who are listening here, don't like throw stones and send me rotten messages. But they said with a symphony, you have 1 or 2 instruments that tend to be the focal part of a particular piece, and they might dominate or be the center of that piece. The other instruments in orchestra in the symphony is the supporting cast. But then the next piece of music is going to be more lopsided or focused on another instrument or 2, and the others are the supporting cast. And she said, you're just in that stage of life where establishing your career requires more time and effort. The key is it can't always be the focus. There may be a time where work needs to take a supporting role to being the dad, to being the husband, right? That really impacted me because even throughout a year, there's going to be certain months that I might be lopsided, so to speak, in regards to my time. But it's okay to be a little bit imbalanced, and you might need to at the beginning of your mortgage career to be a little bit more focused to be a little bit more disciplined, to put in a little bit more time, and the extras and the nights and the weekends. If you get a phone call at 8 o'clock and you're new and you're getting your first lead from a real estate agent, you might need to pull away from your family, take the application, get the pre-approval in place. And then maybe in 10 years into your career, you can say, I can't do it. I'm putting my kids to bed, but I can jump on it first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be imbalanced. And that's the beauty of a symphony.
Yep.
So,
yeah, the crescendo into your, work life, building that up, and then you can, decrescendo and focus on family.
Yeah. So
That's a cool analogy.
I just really appreciated that conversation. It really had a huge impact on me, not just in that conversation, but again and again as I've thought back on it.
Yeah.
When you're interviewing a new loan officer, what do you feel like are the top 2, 3, 4 skill sets that will help them be successful?
Yeah, attitude. Well, skill set wise, sales is, depending on the role, sales is so important. If they're going to be a loan officer, client facing, they have to know sales skills, and more specifically, how to talk to somebody, how to listen is crucial. One of the first things I learned in my career was just listen to the client. What do they need? Because a lot of times they'll tell you their needs, and if you can provide a solution, that's basic selling 101. Then it's really easy to say, hey, here's option 1, here's option 2, option 3, based on your needs and your goals. To do that professionally and present it in a professional sales presentation, with it being a mortgage is a separate skill. But I think if you could learn how to listen and then how to sell, you're going to have a huge leg up in the business. I've
heard what you're discussing, or what you're saying is would be a soft skill. People skills, which generally would be an extrovert type of personality. Am I summarizing that in an acceptable way? I love what you're saying, though, the ability to listen, because I think there are a lot of extroverts that are loud and they talk at you rather than listen. But the people skills and being able to navigate, keep a conversation, identify follow-up questions are all just kind of tied into that people skills. And I think a lot of that is just natural. People either have it or they don't. I don't know if that's really one that is developed. Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think you can work on it. I remember when I was first doing loans, it was in a call center, and you're doing phone sales. I think that's still a people-to-people sell. But the manager, he bought everyone on the phone, like in the call center, mirrors, and he said, hey, you need to, when you're on the phone, you need to look in the mirror because people can hear you smile, right? And so because at first it was just like you just didn't really realize that you could have energy on the phone and that person on the other line could hear your energy, but that was a skill you had to develop. And so not necessarily it was like I loved being on the phone, but I got really good at being on the phone and developed that skill. I think naturally probably there's more introverted or extroverted personalities, but I do think you can work on people skills.
And now that you say that, I do agree with you. But I will say that there are people that are innately born naturally, with more of that.
100%.
Comes natural. I think it's important when you're doing those interviews to talk about that being a critical skill to be successful in the business, and problem-solving skills. I think as a loan officer, that is one that can be learned. I feel like I have become more and more of a problem solver in the way that my brain thinks. By the longer I've been in the business, the more files I've worked on, case studies, but I feel like that's also key is, do you feel like you're a good problem solver?
Mm-hmm. And how do you field that with new loan officers? Are you giving them case studies, or are you asking them, like, give me a story in the past, or how do you kind of
I don't think it's a way for me to be able to identify, saying through an interview process that, oh, you're a problem solver.
Right.
But I think talking through and saying, these are some of the attributes and qualities of highly successful loan officers.
Mm-hmm.
do you feel like you have these qualities? Yeah. And I think they will know if they have it or not. People know if they're an extrovert or introverted. If they have natural people skills, but I think the attitude is huge. You positivity. This industry can kick you in the gut again and again. And if you're naturally a positive person that can just keep coming back with that smile, with that positive energy, I think can be really critical, especially in moments that are difficult in your career.
Yeah, and the other thing I think a lot of loan officers too, especially getting going, is the impact we have. We're dealing with people's 3 most important things in their life: family, money, and their home, all at once, right? Mm-hmm. If someone's selling a house, there's a lot of stress. It's a really high stress transaction. So to come in and help relieve that, to be that positive force, to be that leader, to guide them through the process, and to just be like a friend, listen to them and help them with that problem, I think is invaluable, versus, calling a 1-800 number, your U-Haul's out front of your house, you can't get a hold of your loan officer, you got to book a hotel. Like, it can become a nightmare with those 3 most important things, and to have that guide along the way is so important.
I think you wrapped that up quite well. I also think the first 5 years of someone's mortgage career can be really critical. I think the first year or 2, the focus and accomplishment, the challenges are different than years, say 3 or 4, and also and those are going to be different from years, 5 and thereafter. So I think it's also good to talk about those with potential loan officers, that the first year or 2 are rough. They are the hardest. You're going to be told no the most in your prospecting. Income can be greatly inconsistent in those years. You may have some really, really good months, but you might have some months where you basically make minimum wage, and the only reason you made minimum wage is because of the compensation rules that were regulated by. I feel like those are the years that extreme discipline is required, maybe more time, but navigating those years are completely different than years, say, 3 and 4. I think by year 3 and 4, if you're being consistent, you're doing the hard things, you're being disciplined, paychecks start being more consistent. They become larger and larger as you become more efficient, and that's an opportunity to create some security, right? To some financial foundation that can be built. Where years 5 and thereafter, if that trajectory continues, it's a totally different ball game, that you're now having an opportunity to create a legacy, right? To have an abundance. I think it's good to kind of lay some of those timelines and expectations out, not to limit someone and say, you can't do these faster, but more to say, this is a long game. You may make less money in the first few years than you would with another career path, but I can guarantee you, if you do it right and commit and do the hard things and stick to the discipline, you'll make way more money than a lot of those other career opportunities. But it's the delayed gratification. It's the long game.
Yeah, I would almost even add into the first year or 2 years, especially if you're like a junior loan officer, or if you're under a team and you're learning, that can make that, that gap, that can even shorten that gap even, make it even a smaller period of time, because you're around all that much more. You have much more experience.
Let's expound on that just a little bit. If a loan officer is being brought in as a junior loan officer to a senior loan officer that's bringing in volume, yes, your pay might be less. You might have other different duties and responsibilities, but probably the biggest benefit, in my opinion, is being exposed to so many different files and case studies. Your learning and knowledge will happen so much faster because you have more files to learn from, even though you're not making a full commission or any commission on working on those files. So is your W-2 as large as it would be out on your own? Maybe not. But it's kind of that cost of tuition to get there.
Yeah, putting in the reps, doing the laps, building the base. Because then when you do maybe start your own thing or build your own team, you've just been there, done that.
But I see loan officers, Sean, that end up um, getting comfortable and then never end up ripping the Band-Aid off and going on their own. So how do you get that mentorship and know when to say, I'm done, it's time to me to spread my wings and fly?
Yeah, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I think for certain people, being on a team, especially if you're feeling rewarded and the compensation's there, if you're feeling valued, it's a good culture, it's okay to just be a part of a team. That might not be your personality to take that risk and be a full-time loan officer and have the whole team, on your shoulder, so to speak. So I think it's okay to be in that place as long as it meets your needs, as a human. But yeah, if you're going to go on your own, man, it's tough to know the timing. For me, I was just kind of thrown into it. And so it's like, I just didn't really have a chance to think about it. But I think if you have a couple really good referral partners, you've got a good sphere of influence, a good client base, maybe you have a builder or, some sort of pipeline that's coming in with leads. You just have to kind of run your situation and know, like, hey, is this going to make sense for me to do it?
One little tip of advice I have for someone who might be joining a team, being a junior loan officer, being mentored, I highly, highly recommend going back to that dream board and that vision, and you pick a calendar date, whether it's a year out, whether it's 3 years out, it doesn't matter, but you predetermine the date that you are moving on. And it doesn't matter how much you've learned. It doesn't matter how much knowledge you've gained. It's a predetermined date because you'll constantly talk yourself out of it and kick the can down the road. But if you circle it on the calendar now and you're working towards it, the decision is already made. And I think it just helps. I think it helps to not get stuck in that trap of kicking the can down the road.
So you're saying put it on the calendar and commit.
Yeah. Let's use an example of a builder account. There's a lot of loan officers that will work for a company and they'll be asked to be put on a builder account. Working with a builder where the company has the relationship with the builder, they're being asked to manage those leads and get deals closed. They're getting paid a smaller commission on that captured business. But then all of a sudden it becomes all the eggs in one basket. All the other relationships that were there might be falling to the wayside, and all of that attention gets put on that one builder account. I think it's really important to say, hey, a builder account can do a ton of good. It can give you reps. It can help you build your database of past clients. But you need to have a predetermined date saying this builder account needs to have an expiration date. I need to move on at some point and not have all my eggs in the basket, because what happens if you're ever taken off of the account? What happens if that builder sells to a national chain that you're no longer associated with it? You have nothing else to. It's harder to pivot. It's harder to pivot when all your eggs are in one basket.
Sure. Yeah.
So same concept. If you're bringing on as a junior LO, take all the benefit, learn from everything that's there, but have a predetermined date on when it's time to move on.
Yeah, I think that's good advice.
Another thing I think is really important for a new loan officer is to take the time to identify their connections, right? I don't care how it's done, if it's in a fancy software or an Excel spreadsheet, but kind of starting to build out your CRM of your sphere of influence. Family and friends, what real estate agents do you know? What builders do you know? CPAs, financial planners, all these different areas that loan officers have the potential to gain business from. Identify who your existing relationships are, I think is really, really key in coming out of the blocks fast.
Yeah, I think the saying I heard was start with your sphere. So yeah, your family, your cousins, your brothers, those people really close to you, those are the people that are going to help you initially. One kind of funny story on that was when I was just getting started, my one grandpa, he's a veteran, and he didn't use me. And it stuck with me ever since. But he called me, he was asking me questions. I was just starting. He's like, so tell me about the loan amortization. And I was like, that was before like, you know, Google and stuff, but it was like,
you're looking up what amortization means.
what does that mean? You know, and so, and I don't blame him for not using me, but at the same time, it's, you know, like that's going to happen too. And you can't take it personal, right? But those people, you know, it's more likely to happen.
Yeah. I like that. I think that's hilarious. Real quick example I'd like to share of a key referral source that I greatly underestimated earlier in my career. I ended up giving some mortgage advice, and the advice was to this gal who I told her not to do the loan. She was working with Mountain America. Her friend encouraged her to talk to me to get a second opinion. The interest rates were really high. Interest rate wasn't terribly high, but the fees were really high, and wanted to just get a second opinion. Well, within 10 minutes of that conversation, I find out they're planning on selling that house in the next 2 years when they graduate, and the job that her husband was going to get was going to take her out of Washington County. So I'm looking at the numbers going, this doesn't make sense. The cost versus the savings, if you're planning to sell that house, you're not even recouping your costs within 2 years. You shouldn't be refinancing. Well, this lady did hair for a living. And I started realizing there's certain industries like hair, nails, lashes, different industries that there's a lot of small talk that's taking place with your clientele. Mm-hmm. And I underestimated those individuals being referral partners. Even though I told that lady no to doing the refi, that it wasn't smart, she referred more people to me that next year than most of my existing real estate agent relationships. Wow. That kind of diminished over time, but I guess I want to highlight to identify people who are talkers, who are the people who could be a great kind of train them to be your salesperson, if you will, who are naturally and organically small talking as part of their careers.
Yeah. And on that same note too, as a new loan officer, you're probably going to swing and miss a lot, but it's always important to fail professionally. And so even if you can't get the deal or you lose to another lender, to be professional about it and focus on the relationship over the one deal long term is going to pay dividends over the life of your career. Yeah. And people can feel that, what your intention is.
Totally agree. So as we kind of wrap, I want to just kind of summarize some of the things we talked about with advice and expectations for new loan officers. Understanding your why, dream boards, visions, and making sure that you are in line with your spouse and have support from your spouse. Motivation, understanding what motivates you, and using that to your advantage. Work-life balance. Your relationship with money, the ability to have delayed gratification, being a good money manager, and building up a savings account. Taking a second job if you need to, nights and weekends to keep you afloat in those initial year or two, and the skills that require for the industries with people skills, problem solving, introvert attitude, identifying your own kind of CRM and sphere of influence, all good things to identify as skill sets to be a good loan officer in the business. And anything else you want to add before we wrap?
No, I think just this podcast alone is a testament to if you are a new loan officer, it's okay to reach out to other people outside of your company. We're at different companies. But if there is a new loan officer that has questions or that's looking for a mentor or that needs help, I mean, Ben and I, no recruiting, conversations, but if you need help on any of this or if there's something that stuck out to you, we would 100% share and help in any way we can. Yeah,
I know both Shaun and myself find a lot of fulfillment in helping others solve problems. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to call us to get a second opinion. Even if it's a particular loan file, give us a holler. We'd love to support you, and just part of who we are and wanting to pay it forward. Thanks for listening to this episode of After 5 p.m.
We're out.